Howdy, coming back at you with a quick fun one. Ah, whew. Tell you what. This chapter is titled Lucky, and that's just friggin' hilarious. Okay. Years back, we had a real estate client who was interested in buying the Red Lodge. The Red Lodge was a listing that we got from Kate McDonough, we'd known for some time. She was the writer of an article in the local paper along with Wendy. The paper was called The Fence Post, and Kate's article was titled The Mountain Mouth, and Wendy did Wellness with Wendy. Kate's was about Mustang and mountain life, and Wendy's article were about health and wellness. So we had been to the Red Lodge of Kate's a few times, even swam in the neighbor's spring. We had more than a great time having a session with Kate and enjoying the Red Lodge's awesomeness. It was a 40-acre stick-built, means traditional with concrete and 2x4s, two-story home with garage and sweet views. You had to off-road about 8 miles to the property. It's a one-lane and a bit bumpy, and the house sits just below the peak of the Red Mountain. When we got the listing for Kate, it was cool because we knew the property so well. We showed it to a heaping load of clients, but everyone was freaked out about the road and about being so far out. It's a bit more wild up there on Red Mountain as it was on our ranch. So when we had clients who owned property next door that wanted to buy Red Lodge, we were stoked because he was already cool with the road and the wildlife. So it was a guy who lived next door. To keep name concealed, let's just call this client Lucky and his gal. It is actually what he wanted to be called, so that works out, or even can't remember his real name. When we met Lucky, he seemed real laid back and cool. He showed us a picture of a cave on his adjacent 40-acre property that had a huge bear. 20-foot tall bear paw carved on the side by the natives. The natives were called the Tuba Tulabul. It's a super cool because it's a bear cave. Lots of large black bear in these parts. I eventually have a listing currently right down the road that's 60 acres, and we call it Black Bear Ranch because when we were showing it, a black bear was sort of following us on the ridgeline. I or Wendy pointed out, and the damn hunter we were with showed us the property, took off after the bear. We were waiting at the car for no joke an hour and a half for this bear chase, and it was so stupid. They weren't going to get any closer to that bear than the bear wanted. They're super fast. They can run like horses. Actually, there are quite a few here where we are now, here at the river. Just chased one onto the street the other night, but that's a different story. So Lucky and his gal were a bit wild as they were camp living on the adjacent property. I can't remember them showing us the coolest bathtub outdoors. I can't remember the show was cool bath. It was a clawfoot bathtub over a campfire. Sounds kind of honky, but under them stars, it would have been seriously cool. I know because we did something similar at our ranch with a horse trough and a bathtub, but ours was piped to the hot water heater. No campfire at my place. So Lucky and his gal were looking to improve their living conditions to full plumbing and all the fixings. Seriously, the Red Lodge was awesome. Needed a floor and also a fireplace chimney needed to be cleaning. Kate already had a chimney fire. That comes up later. So Lucky and his gal are stoked to buy the place and put down $5,000 with a purchase price of $250. At the time, this was a low price for the place, but nothing was really moving. It was a really slow market. We did the regular diligence with Lucky and his gal, so his lady was supposedly the money behind the purchase, and the money was coming from a lawsuit. We did receive bank statements that show they were okay to buy the place. I'm assuming maybe, or some zeros were added. The only reason I say that is because one time when Wendy and I were showing it to Lucky's gal mentioned that she was a songwriter. Later on the trek off Red Mountain, Wendy said super odd that I was talking about the whatever band name, and then Lucky's gal said she was a songwriter for the band just a few minutes later. Red flag. We were both kind of taken back because we were waiting for the money for so long. Kate's counting on it, and there is this foreclosure looming. And now Lucky's gal is a famous songwriter. Oh, shit. But we have bank statements. All of this along with the weird stress of being December 2012. Everybody remember that? Yeah, it's really happening now, though, right? Wake up, people. So anyways, so that's all ad-lib. So in case you don't know, the world was supposed to end on December 21st, 2012. And in our survivalist redneck of the woods, there was some real concern and excitement over the possibility. I can remember there was and still is the mountain militia, a bunch of drunks who are ready to block roads and shut down our mountain. Actually, they still there. Some have passed away, but there is that mentality up there where you're armed for bears. City folks don't seem so scary. I was never part of the roadblock crew, but thought it was real cool. Like a private mountain from 3,500 to 7,000 feet in case of emergency. Real estate sales point. Who knows what would happen, right? I don't know. That was their plan. After that was the problem. You never know what's going to happen. We had been waiting for months for this escrow, and there were so many red flags, but what do you do? After we both got a negative feeling that the deal may work, we started marketing the place and trying to get a backup offer. Pressure was on because we felt the obligation to Kate. Kate had moved out of Red Lodge months ago and had moved on, but this was her retirement. All of our efforts to procure a backup failed, and it was a little hairy trying to show it with Lucky next door. Never had a problem with that though. Excuse after excuse, and some of the shit was weird. December 2012 hits. There was a storm on the horizon, and the pressure was also reaching a critical point with Wendy and I over this damn Red Lodge fiasco. At this point, I really had no hope that they were coming through with the money, and we both were seriously concerned about intentions. A couple of days before the incident, we had a lady stop by our office almost in tears. At the time, I shared a building with a sheriff. It was an unmanned sheriff's office, but the county paid the lease with justification of presence, or why not have a sign in the area. That is how I sold it to General Services when I worked for the county as a government agent, real estate agent. But nothing funny about this lady in her report. So the sick thing is that years later, I have this real estate office in this little building, and I was then taking all this police reports, not officially, but the offer assigned to check on the office from time to time, give us a cell, so it made us this big contact. Apparently, she had her cabin broken into and all the guns stolen. She left me a list and included some really odd guns like World War II rifles, high-powered rifles, shotguns, pistols, ammo boxes with probably a few thousand shells. Hell, I think there was even a musket. The list could have opened a small gun store handling exotic weapons. It was seriously sad. Most of the guns were like family heirlooms, so she actually did break down and cry a few times telling us about the break-in. We both gave each other looks when we heard it was on Red Mountain. Only a couple of days before the end, or even the day before, Wendy got an inkling that we should need to go check on Red Lodge. It had started to snow, but we felt it was important to check on the place, so we headed up the mountain. I can remember the drive up felt kind of tense because we felt they may be in the home. It was cold, and we had noticed during one of our showings that it looked like someone had attempted or did get in the home. I can remember the snow starting to fall as we four-wheeled up Thompson Canyon and then up Red Mountain. It's always fun to find an excuse to go off-roading, especially when it's snowing. As we got to the main gate, the fun and excitement immediately turned to anger. What the F? They were in the house and had a huge fire going in the chimney that was a fire risk. We had a minute to figure out what to do as we pulled from the gate around the house to the stairs up to the living room. They were just chilling for the night. They were completely moved in. You could see it from down below by the garage. We really didn't have time to discuss intentions or motives at this point. The house was a risk of another chimney fire, and they had to get out. They were actually one of the best examples of a country of vision. This was. I'm not a firearms type of person. Personally, being the size that I am, I can handle myself and wouldn't want the temptation. But in this instance, I thought maybe I should grab Wendy's 9mm. I bought Wendy this little gun, and I had no idea even how to cock the thing. But I figured I'd have it in my pocket and I could assist someone with it if it needed. So here I go in the snow up the stairs on the Red Lodge with a 9mm fully visible in my pocket of my coat. When I get to the top of the stairs, my rage over this fireplace is overwhelming. Maybe that's how I deal with it. But opened the door and said, "What the F? You need to get out." Lucky squared off with me, looked down at the 9 and said, "Oh, is that how it is?" And I said, "F you, this is how it is." And I pushed past him, grabbed the burning fire log out of the fireplace, walked it over the deck, and tossed it over the snow. When I turned around, I scolded them for the fire, and I said, "Get out." Walked out of the door and said, "I'll be waiting until you're out," and walked back to the car. When I got to the car, I was working to gain control over myself. And then they started to unload. It was a bit shocking to see all the guns. I laughingly said to Wendy, I would have been screwed if it came to that. I really didn't know how to operate that gun. Then it became more alarming as how many guns and ammo boxes came out of that house. Weird ones, too. I was actually laughing a bit that this mini gun store was in Red Lodge. I recall saying to Wendy, I told you that the world was going... I told you they thought the world was going to end, so why not move in? I can't remember who pointed out the crazy black powder musket, but it was Wendy who put it together. Then it hit me, and I said, don't you remember that lady in our office? Then we were counting and accounting for some of the weird ones, so glad that went well. The next day, we dealt with escrow being over and the shock that all of that went on. We had to still deal with Lucky to cancel escrow, and it was heated from then on. The next day or so, we also called the sheriff. We couldn't in good conscience not call the sheriff after seeing all that have the lady cry in my office. Hell, her gun list was pinned behind my desk. So when the sheriff did arrive later, he indicated that he didn't want to go up to that place because he didn't have no backup. He actually asked me, can you go up there with me and be my backup? I thought, okay, why the hell not? I wouldn't even care if I see Lucky. I was still hot over the December 21st, 2012 eviction. This was a couple days later, and we know now the world was still spinning, so I headed up the mountain with the sheriff car. In the sheriff car to check out if this gun stash was at Red Lodge or what was up. We got to Red Lodge, and the sheriff took some notes that there were gun cartridge casings around the house that matched most of the weird guns on the list. Looks like someone tested all these guns right here about where we parked. Seems kind of interesting. They had a shoot-off where I parked. The sheriff asked where Lucky's place was, and I showed him the gate. He drew his gun and headed toward the gate. I followed. He looked at me and said, well, aren't you going to draw your firearm? I started chuckling, and I said, I don't carry a gun. The sheriff turned white. He looked pasty, but no one was home or at the trailer. Maybe they were hiding in the bushes, but we didn't hang around too long. I actually heard they got all their guns back. Some other people got caught with them in the basin. The basin is Walker Basin, a cattle basin at 4,000 feet, which is lower than this property. It didn't turn out well for Kate. The home didn't sell, and even though we were technically in escrow, the bank foreclosed on the place. An aggressive attorney investor worked his leads at B of A to buy the place for nothing immediately after the foreclosure. It was very frustrating, as this guy had a show hit to him like he was a customer and then used his contacts to swindle the place. The foreclosure was looming, so I was upset about that, but the fact that he got this place for such a stupid discount, then he flipped it for a huge profit, all at the bank and Kate's detriment, that was not right. A few months later, Mr. Lucky walked up to me at a gas station. I was trying to grab a knife as he approached, but it was unneeded. He apologized when which I appreciated. So he had left his gal, who was the real issue. Anyways, I always say if you want to steal a house, all you need is the world to end. On a side note, the Red Lodge burned in the same fire that took our ranch that we're going to talk about later. All right, thanks. That was a good one. Next one. Wow. Weston's the wildest one.